Reading Psalm 100. Make a joyful noise to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with laughter. Come into his presence with singing. Know that the Lord is God. It is he that made us. We didn't make him. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him. Bless his name. For the Lord is good. His steadfast love endures forever, and his faithfulness to all generations.
Good morning. What a great way to begin. Magnificent music from Scott and Andrew and a psalm of praise from Sue. Isn't life good? Actually, it's sort of weird how things pan out sometimes. When I planned the theme for this gathering, we were part of an Australian community that was sort of emerging from the COVID-19 gloom. Despite a few hiccups, things were improving. And there was even talk of small groups gathering for worship. So I thought to myself, let's have a celebration. We'll make music with the maestro of the organ, and we'll build a gathering around the theme of gratitude. Well, all that shifted last Tuesday when the second lockdown period dropped. Suddenly we were back in the relative gloom of isolation and separation. Should I abandon the theme of gratitude and go with something a little more somber, a little more serious? Well, guess what? I didn't. Fortunately, Scott and Andrew and Robin were able to rearrange their schedules and we got the recording done before the lockdown dropped. And here we are to have fun making music and expressing gratitude. It may seem strange in the face of COVID, in the context of a lockdown, to run with a theme on gratitude. But I reckon gratitude is actually the perfect theme for this time. And a little later on, I'll tell you why I think that. In the meantime, let me welcome you to this gathering of the Hartwell and Surrey Hills Churches of Christ for Sunday the 12th of July. Can I encourage you as we gather to hold in your minds and your hearts the first peoples of this nation? In particular, perhaps the Wurundjeri people, or whichever people group is local to the area in which you reside, and offer them our gratitude for their care of the land upon which we stand, and for the wisdom that has been nurtured by their elders, past, present, and emerging. Welcome to our online gathering today.
Candles are often lit in celebration and gratitude, at birthday parties, at anniversaries, at weddings, and even at funerals. The candle is a symbol of light and joy, of hope and gratitude. The Christ candle that we light each week carries similar connotations, a sign of our gratitude to God and a sign of our hope, our confidence even, that no matter what the circumstances in which the candle is lit, God is with us and is working within us and beyond us to bring a healthy, life-giving outcome to our community and for us. On that basis, this morning we light several candles to recognise our gratitude and to highlight our hope. Let's pray. God of mystery, sharer of divine secrets, spirit of sacred stories, all that depends upon you and rejoices in your praise. This day we have gathered, coming from a week of unexpected happenings and events which have surprised us. We thank you for your presence in our lives, even when we don't recognise it. We are so grateful for this community of faith and for the encouragement and warmth we derive from it. May your healing grace be with those who struggle with illness, those who feel lost and marginalised, those who mourn, those who feel isolated and abandoned in this unpredictable world. May your life-giving spirit enfold them and encourage them towards wholeness. And may we, who gather around this candle of light and life, be empowered to reach out to all others in compassion and hope. For we ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
It's so good, isn't it, to have live music as part of our gathering this morning. Thank you to Scott Harrison and Andrew Bruce for their contribution, what we've already heard and what we will hear as the gathering goes on. Scott is no stranger to the people of the Avenue, nor for that matter is Andrew. But we haven't had the opportunity of hearing Scott play for a little while. And we haven't had the opportunity of talking with him for a little while. So this morning, I'm going to have a bit of a chat with Scott about music, about his passions, about the things that bring him delight in the context of his life and work. Well, Scott, really great to chat with you this morning. Thank you so much for being here and making yourself available and
good.
playing your music for us and that sort of stuff. It's magnificent. So really good to see you.
Thank you.
So it's about almost 5 years since you were last here in terms of being part of this community and playing the organ here and that sort of stuff and the piano. So where have you been since and what are you up to these days?
Well, it does seem like a lifetime ago, only 4 years, gosh, or 5 years. After I lived here at Surrey Hills, most of the congregation may or may not be aware that I went to Southern Community Church of Christ to actually work with you actually at the time.
Wonderful. What fun we had.
We did have a lot of fun, and I stayed there until the end of last year, 2019. At the start of 2019, I was offered a job in the education system. As a facilities manager for a primary school very close to where I live, 5-6 minutes away. And that was a blessing after travelling nearly an hour to get to Cheltenham every day. And at the start of this year, late last year, they announced that they would make it 3 days a week if I was interested in that. And then I thought, well, there's a lot of changes going on everywhere. Maybe it's time to make a break and give the church stuff away, which I did. So I finished at Southern Community last December 31st, and started with Fountain Gate Primary School 3 days a week in January this year. So yeah, I've been there since. So my job is OH&S and facilities, and with all the whole COVID thing, it's just out of control.
It sounds very messy at the moment.
It is messy, very messy, but great staff, great place to be.
So organs, you've got a passion and a real interest in organs and organ music and organ repairs and all that sort of stuff. How did you get into that? I mean, what draws somebody into an interest in the organ?
That is a darn good question. I absolutely hated the passion. Wouldn't you believe? In fact, I was taught the organ as a kid by my parents who wanted me to get to learn, and I wanted to play the piano, but they went the organ. And the first organ I played in a church environment was actually where it really started. It was actually one of these instruments, exactly the same as this, at the Oakley Assemblies of God Church. And I played on a Sunday and for the youth on Saturday night. Imagine organ in the youth. Don't know how long ago that was. We won't go there and give the age. Actually I was probably, 17, 18, so a number of years ago. And look, I still wasn't that interested. It was when I got to hear the cinema organ, the theatre organ, like the Wurlitzer pipe organ. That's when it really took off. And I don't know why, really. Initially, it was the mechanics of the instrument, like the fact that it was a mechanical machine that created all this music, not electronic. And then that sort of progressed into wanting to learn more about the sound and the workings of it. So that's kind of where it started, and that was when I was 21, so that was a number of years ago.
Amazing. That's great. How good for us that you did discover that passion, because we get to enjoy it.
Oh, so cool.
It's really good. Now, you also have a bit of a habit of collecting organs.
Oh, God, yes.
What's the quirkiest organ you've ever owned?
Quirkiest organ I ever owned was a Kawai, K-A-W-A-I, Japanese, very similar to Yamaha. And I used to work for Kawai back in the 80s, early 90s, sorry. And they had built 8 of this particular model organ called a T30, that's T for Tom, 30. And it was a 4-keyboard, full instrument, white, and biggest thing you've ever seen with 2 big tone cabinets. And I bought it back then and I sold it, which I regretted dramatically, and blow me down, 2 years ago on Facebook Marketplace, the thing turned up again in Sydney, and I bought it back.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I bought it back to Melbourne, got it all going, and about 3 or 4 months ago, I was looking at it going, this thing is just stupidly big. It weighs 290 kilograms, kills anybody that tries to move it, and it's as loud as heck. But it's very quick. It's one of 4 in the world.
Wow.
And so I actually sold it recently, and it's gone to a music museum in Denmark.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was the quirkiest organ I've ever owned, and I probably wouldn't buy it again because it's just too damn big.
So you get to go to Denmark and play it?
I hope so. Yes. The owner's very keen for me to do so. He collects outrageously unusual instruments, and I said, what about outrageously big and heavy, because this would just certainly fit in that category. So yeah, the T30 Kawai.
Well, what about, you also play all around the world, you do concerts and performances all around the world. What's the most interesting or significant or whatever place and organ that you've ever played?
That's a really hard question to answer, because every instrument is unique in its own way. There's probably a couple of standouts. Certainly the Organ Stop Pizza Parlour in, maybe you'll laugh, Mr. Brooker, in Mesa, Arizona, is a Wurlitzer organ, and it's in a 700-seat restaurant, and the thing's played 7 nights a week, and it's a big instrument, huge Wurlitzer pipe organ. That was probably the most unique instrument I was given the opportunity to play. And probably the second one to that, I mean, they're all, as I said, unique. The second one was back in 2017 when I was touring England. It was just after I started with the church, actually, took off to England. At the Bournemouth Pavilion down on the coast of the UK. The Pavilion has an original installation, a 1926 Compton theatre organ, or actually Compton classical organ, concert organ, which does everything. And it's the weirdest instrument because it's on a lift like most of the theatre organs are. The sound comes from two big columns either side of the stage, and the pipework is all stacked inside these columns. But when you play it, the sound only comes out at the top, so you hear it in a very weird way. Like when you're playing the organ, the sound comes, the one that's closest to you, you don't hear at all. You hear the one on the other side of the theatre, and the sound takes about probably 3 to 4 seconds to hit you.
Wow.
I know. So I had about 2 days to rehearse on it.
Yeah.
And I actually played the program and had a ball playing it. Like, it really lends itself to orchestral as well as some of the jazz blues stuff. And then I heard the playback of the recording, and in the auditorium, it's instantaneous. Go figure.
Yeah.
So that would be the most unique.
Weird.
I know.
That would take a bit of getting used to, the lag of...
I was warned about it before I got there. In fact, the operations manager of the theatre emailed me and said to me, "Now, are you familiar with this organ?" And I said, "No." He said, "It is quite a challenge." He said, "We've given you 2 full days to acquaint yourself with it." And I sat down and I played it the first time, and I thought, "Oh, how the heck am I going to present this for a 2 o'clock show?" But after about the first probably 3 or 4 hours, I really decided I loved the sound of it. And even he came down and he said to me, "You're getting more out of this than anything else I got out of it." He said, "It's not fighting you." I said, "Oh, it's fighting me, don't worry about it." But I said, I'm just enjoying the ambience of this thing. So yeah, so that was the most unusual.
And you know, having heard you play, you cover a whole lot of different styles and genres in your music repertoire, but not just in terms of organ, but music generally.
Yeah.
So what is it about music that, you know, like, I guess, what appeals to you about music? What is it about music that draws you in? And what do you think the place of music is in today's world? What does music do particularly maybe in the context of we're living in the COVID lockdown again?
Yeah.
What part does music have in that?
Music is an interesting thing. For me, it plays a very important part because it's the one thing that transcends languages and different cultures and whatever the case may be. Music is the one thing that's constant. You have the joy, you have the ability of creating a whole variety of emotions from people by how you play something. A good example is like in a song for a second, the Death March. Always in minor chords. It's always very depressing, and it's everyone thinks, "Oh, that's just terrible," So anything in it, and having accompanied silent films, you can actually create a whole bunch of effects doing that as well.
Yep.
I think the big thing about it for me is that could you imagine a world without music? Just when you watch television, see a movie, or even turn the radio on, if there was no music, it would be a very strange place. And as a performer, I find the ability to pick people up where they are and transport them to somewhere else for an hour, 2 hours, whatever the case may be, is such a privilege to be able to do it. And for me, I feel the passion in that, and it's a great way of expressing that passion is through the art of music.
It must be very satisfying to present stuff that moves people.
Depending on how it moves them.
Yeah,
But generally, yes, it is.
Yeah.
You can often, there are times where you're playing something and you think, this is not going well, and how the hell can I get myself out of this right now?
Yeah.
And it's terrible. It happens in performances to us all. You're halfway through something, you think, if only I could get myself out of this mess, I'd be a lot happier. So you try to end it and apologise to the audience, and then you have a good laugh. But generally, it is. It's wonderful to be able to move people, particularly with a piece that's very pretty or very beautiful, and you can sense the emotion in the air, and that's really quite lovely.
So following on from that, and the final question. I've been at your performances. Like, I've seen you perform, Kingston City Hall and all that sort of stuff.
Sure.
Can you conjure up the feeling for us when it all just clicks when your music clicks with the other performers or with the vocalist or with the audience. What's the feeling that it gives you in that moment? You think, yes, we've nailed it.
It's a very unique feeling. A good example is we did a program with Ruby Page,
Yep.
who you know, back in October last year. And we all had big nights the night before. Like, I had performances that went quite late, so did she and so did the band members. And it was at Kingston City Hall where we did the show. And the first two numbers were hard yakka. Like, I was thinking, God, it's going to kill me. It's going to be the longest 2 hours of my life. And I'm sure she was singing the same. Then the third piece was called Fly Me to the Moon, and her sister Nani came out. And I played the introduction, and it was just like the penny dropped. All of a sudden, we're all in sync, and you suddenly become part of something bigger. It's not about you or about the vocalist, it's about you as a collective. And the end result leaving the stage. I think Stephen Covey often says, always begin with the end in mind. So the finished product leaves the stage and arrives at the audience, and that's what it's like. So it's like I call it a light bulb moment.
Yep.
And you probably experience it as a minister when you speak. Sometimes you just know it, and you just know it's there. And all of a sudden you look at everyone's connected with you, and that's what it is as a musician. Like that light bulb moment, and all of a sudden you realise you're all in sync, doing your own thing, but doing it collectively for the common outcome.
And does that keep you going? You know, does it keep
it does, and it just it does, It builds and it just like once it clicks, and it just gets better and better and better. And it you know, sometimes it can go a little bit south, but generally it tends. Once you're there, you're there. Once you're in that mindset. The intermission's the worst part. That's when you usually have to do it again.
It's probably a really good model or image, I suppose, in terms of how we ought to be trying to live in the world. You know, the sense of diverse community, that somehow it can click. You know?
Working as a collective. Yeah. Even though we all come from diverse, different lifestyles and cultural backgrounds and whatever the case may be, the fact that we're all pulling to one cause.
Yeah.
You know, we are a family in the sense of not knowing each other in that sense, but as a family or community of Australia. Yeah, I agree totally.
Hey Scott, thank you so much. It's been great catching up with you and hearing from you and hearing your music. So
my pleasure.
Really appreciate it.
Anytime, my friend.
If we were able to, I'd shake your hand. But we
no, just COVID shake.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure, David. Thank you.
table and let us share together in the way that music shares our lives. Is music in the air, the music of great artists, the sweetness of a bird call, loud rumbling of trucks, the toot of a train whistle in the valleys, the chatter in the streets, radios and televisions talking to us, selling us something, or just the whispering of the trees? Do we take time to listen? Life can be such a rush and the sounds get confused. What do we hear? What are we listening for? Music gives a soul to the universe, wings to the mind, flight to the imagination, and life to everything. That's from Plato, and I think it's very relevant that he's basically saying, let's take the time to listen. And as we come to communion, let's listen to what's around us, listen for the voice of God, listen to the birds, find something soothing in the things around us, and perhaps not the loudness of the cars or the radio and the TV. And as we've been overwhelmed by the COVID-19 announcements, then I think that we need to turn them off and focus and listen to other things around us. So let us share communion together. Thank you, God, for the music that brings my soul such joy. Let's share together and enjoy the music.
My next guest is Janine Lord. Janine has been part of the community at the Avenue for many years, and amongst other things is the editor of that snippets column that we run in the Friendly Word each month. Janine also has an interest in justice, social and environmental concerns, and she's agreed to have a chat with us today about that interest, that passion of hers. Welcome, Janine. Thank you for talking with us today.
Thanks for inviting me to talk.
Janine, let's start by, where did this interest in justice and environmental issues get started for you?
Oh, well, it's hard to really pinpoint, specifically, but I guess, growing up, I've always liked animals and watching animal documentaries, and I have a brother who became a biologist and was very much in conservation movement, and I guess he kind of was a big influence on me, making me aware of animals and the need to protect them and the need for conservation, national parks and that sort of thing during the years, yeah.
And just stimulated an interest, hey? And that, So, how do you engage in those areas? I mean, what sort of platforms do you use to?
Oh well, mainly really it's online these days. With I find with petitions being readily circulated by Facebook and email that that there's quite a lot of them to sign, and you get emails sent to you asking you to write to your MPs about issues and so on. And usually they give you a bit of guidance as to what to write, or they kind of more or less write it for you, and then I've just sort of adjust it and maybe simplify it a bit, just for my purposes, yeah.
And
it's mainly through email.
Every now and then you send information to others that invites them into some of these campaigns too, which is really helpful.
Yeah, well, I found because when I retired a few years ago and I was looking for things to do, the opportunity that came up to go to university of the third age, year
Uh-huh.
3A.
Yep.
And one of the things that was on offer which appealed to me was climate change, and I thought it would be really good to learn more about that. So
Okay.
I
So
think
if we
having
had
gone
to,
into
sorry.
having started those classes perhaps got me a bit more motivated to, sign petitions and do a little bit more online. Because
Yep.
of being with like-minded people, we can't actually campaign as a group because, government restrictions, but, individually you can, be in
Yeah.
different groups or campaign online. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So if you had to identify one area of particular concern, what do you reckon is the biggest issue or challenge facing Australia these days in terms of the areas that
Oh, well,
you're engaging?
I think facing Australia and the world, it would have to be climate change.
Uh-huh.
Although at the moment it's COVID, with the immediate
Well, yeah.
concern to public health. But I think on the long term, it would have to be climate change because it's something that the world is grappling with. No one's going to be immune from some sort of effect from it. Some are going to be more impacted than others, depending on where you live and what your climate is and what the effects are and how quick the changes are. But we're all going to be impacted in some way, unfortunately.
Yeah. And do you think people take it seriously enough, Janine?
Well, I don't think the politicians do, no. I think a lot of people, are becoming more concerned about it as we've seen in the rise of people participating in social action and protests, and given the things like the Adani coal mine, which is, a big issue and campaign that's been happening over the last few years.
Yeah.
And the number of companies that have walked away from being involved with it now, there's, a significant number of companies and banks that are no longer involved in working with it.
Yep. Janine, as a person living with vision impairment, how easy is it for you to engage in some of these campaigns and get involved in some of these movements?
Well, I find it easiest probably doing it online because I find it a bit difficult to go to protests. I don't feel very confident or safe going to protests given the number of people that might be there, and you're not quite sure exactly how things are going to turn out. I mean, you assume it's going to be peaceful, but you can't always be sure of that, and you can get a little bit overwhelmed by the crowds.
Sure.
So I find it easier to campaign online and to discuss things at U3A and so on, although that's not happening at the moment with the restrictions. But the U3A has been really good. The tutor I have there is excellent, and he's been really good and is fantastic at explaining things, and he has heaps of good videos and that sort of thing as well.
Yeah, okay. I think you do a remarkable job, Janine. I think, I know you're fairly self-effacing about it and say, I don't do very much really, but I think you do a remarkable job. And I think the way you disseminate some of that information is really important for people like me, because it alerts us to some things that we might not otherwise be aware of. So, well done.
Oh, well, there's just so much to keep track of, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Have our areas of interest and so on, but, it's just with the way the world is now with the 24 news cycle, it's just, really a lot to keep up with, and you can't possibly keep up with everything.
No. So it's really helpful for some of us to have research assistants like you out there telling us what we should be looking at. Hey, just a final question. Do you get a buzz out of it? Does it give you a sense of satisfaction when you're engaged in a campaign and maybe
well, sometimes. Yeah, sometimes, because you sort of want to maintain a sense of hope. Sometimes it's easy to get a bit discouraged and think, well, nothing's going to really help. And you hear more about the ice melting in Antarctica. And the other day I even came across a video where it actually had the sound of an iceberg melting, which was quite interesting. It was in a podcast from The Guardian, actually. And, that was sort of quite interesting to actually get the sound of something happening as well.
Yeah.
So it can be a bit discouraging, but I sort of, I guess try to maintain hope as well. And you hear people like Jane Goodall and David Attenborough who, still maintain hope and so on. And you've just got to sort of try and focus on that and do what you can.
Yeah. Well, look, thank you very much for allowing us to sort of get a feel for this interest and passion that you have, and sharing a bit of that with us. So really appreciate it, and we'll look forward to you continuing to increase our awareness of the needs of the world and our society. So thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and just keep a watch on my Facebook page too, because
Will do.
Yeah, I share stuff there too.
Yeah, very handy. Thank you,
Yeah,
Janine.
Janine Lord Droll.
Excellent. Well, maybe we'll put that in the next snippets column so people know how to find
All right.
it.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks,
Okay.
Janine.
Thanks.
How good is it to hear Scott playing that organ? As an aside, can I apologise for the less than perfect sound quality? The whole thing was recorded in a bit of a rush to beat the lockdown deadline, and unfortunately we didn't have a chance to check the sound quality before it was too late to do anything about it. And I really did appreciate Scott and Andrew and the other presenters too for rescheduling at very short notice in order to get the material prepared for this gathering today. Just thinking about music, do you have a favourite song? Most people do. If you frequent the Avenue, then you may well have been accosted by Carolyn Goodwin asking you for your favourite song, which she records, believe it or not, for funeral purposes. But that's another story for another day. I actually have several songs that I designate as my favourite songs from time to time, but I do have one that is my sort of all-time standout favourite, and it's the song Nights in White Satin by the Moody Blues. Nights in white satin, never reaching the end, letters I've written, never meaning to send. What a great song, what a great song. Whenever I hear it, I am transported straight back to the quadrangle of Christ College at the University of Tasmania. I lived there for a couple of years. And, I remember those sunny Tasmanian days, sitting or lying on the grass in the quadrangle, the speakers in the windows of the rooms above, blaring out the Moody Blues music, Nights in White Satin and others, filling the air. Those were the days, hey? Music is quite powerful like that, isn't it? Just hearing a song can conjure up a feeling or an emotion or an experience, can change our mood for better or for worse. For example, Heather, whenever she hears the song 9 to 5 on the radio, feels ill. Why? Because it was played a lot on the radio during the time of her first pregnancy, and it takes her back to that. Mostly we remember songs because they make us feel good, make us feel happy. I guess that's the theory of the background music they play in stores like Kmart and Big W, playing music to make people feel happy so that they'll linger a little longer in the store and, they hope, spend more money. Maybe that's the secret to happiness. Listen to the right music all the time. Actually, what I want to suggest this morning is that the secret to happiness is the practice of gratitude. And it's really no secret, it's quite well documented. It was David Stendhal Rast who wrote, "We think people are grateful because they are happy, but look closely and you'll discover that people are happy because they are grateful." Want to be happy in life? Cultivate an attitude of gratitude. Not just when things are going smoothly, but particularly when things are getting rough. Gratitude, you see, is not a mood that you can turn on or off according to the circumstances or according to what song is being played. It's not a reaction that pops up when people or life is good to us. Gratitude is a way of life, a perspective on life. Frederick and Marianne Broussat have written about gratitude as being the grammar for life. This is what they say, an underlying structure that helps us construct and make sense out of our lives. To learn the grammar of gratitude, they write, practice saying thank you for happy and challenging experiences, for people, animal, things, art, memories, dreams. Count your blessings and praise God, they say. Utter blessings and express your appreciation to everything and everyone you encounter. That's the sort of gratitude that is captured in Psalm 100, the psalm that Sue read to us to set the tone for our gathering this morning. A gratitude that is deeper and more abiding than the superficial feeling of the moment. Which is why the focus on gratitude is especially appropriate even in the midst of this pandemic lockdown period. The grammar of gratitude would transform the experience of lockdown from one of frustration at the restrictions placed upon us to one of relief and thankfulness that we have a way of keeping ourselves and others safe. Want to be happy? Cultivate an attitude of gratitude. How might you do that? Well, you could use the questions that were part of this morning's moment of reflection each evening as you prepare for sleep. It's actually an ancient form of spiritual practice known as the examen. And maybe each day as you prepare for sleep, you could run those questions through your mind. What today am I most grateful for? What today am I least grateful for? And what is God saying to me in the context of all that? Another practice very simple practice you might want to consider, you could determine that each time this week you pick up a piece of cutlery, you might use it as a prompt to call to mind something for which you are grateful. Pick up the knife, pick up the fork, think about something for which you're grateful. You could also take the opportunity provided by the COVID virus, which prevents us from shaking hands or hugging, to adopt the offering of the gasso, which is this movement, bringing your two hands together in front of your heart as a sign of thanks and blessing to the person before you. This physical reinforcement of your determination to practice gratitude can actually be quite an effective way of training your mind. A little like playing your favourite song over and over. Give it a try. The practice of gratitude just might transform your life, just might make you happy. God of all blessings, source of all life, giver of all grace, we thank you for the gift of life, for the breath that sustains life, for the food that nurtures life, and for the love of family and friends that empowers life. We thank you for the beauty of creation, for the sounds of joy that greet us every morning, for the warmth of the sun, for the cleansing rain, for the mystery of the wind. We thank you for the wonder of the universe, its space and its silence, its light and its dark, that speak to us of the breadth of your generosity and the depth of your love. May our gratitude draw us beyond ourselves, to become a communion with all life, a door to our own soul, a path to your nearness. In love, grace, and peace we pray. Amen.